This conference will now be recorded.
Good evening, everybody. This is Rick Davis. I'm standing in for the absent Hugh and Gary. We're sending out a search party to find out what happened to them. We don't really know, but we will report in if we hear. And so we've got a makeshift team of moderators. We've got Phil Siegel, we've got Dan Dressen, we've got Gary Island, and we have a special visit from our long serving moderator that we don't see very often anymore, Mr. Howard Wolinsky, who we are very grateful to have here tonight, especially since he's going to talk to us about some new research. A quick thank you to all of our sponsors who are Bayer, Johnson & Johnson, Myriad, Novartis, Foundation Medicine, and Johnson & Johnson. We, although they sponsor us, we have no obligation to them. We're completely unbranded, and we will say what we need to say no matter who sponsors us. So moving on, we're going to welcome Howard, and then we'll go to, I think we have 3 new men. So Howard, tell us what you reported on this weekend, please.
Okay, well, it's good to be here and glad to see everybody. And for the newbies, you'll be treated well. And don't worry, you're going to survive this whole thing. At any rate, we used to talk a lot in the group about microultrasound. And I first heard about it back in 2017 and actually tried to get it. It's an alternative to MRI. It's like a very specialized ultrasound. It can see. Well, originally it was a research tool that was used on the prostates of rodents, and so they tried it on humans, and it was like a perfect fit. And for guys like me and maybe you, who get claustrophobic in an MRI tube, it seemed like an alternative. But it wasn't until this weekend that a study came out that showed that essentially microultrasound was just as good as MRI. And so this has important implications around the world for men in our situation because microultrasound, doesn't require you to get into a tube. It's like a regular ultrasound. It can easily work with men who have metal in their bodies. I don't know about shrapnel, but certainly pacemakers, artificial hips, things like that. And it's far cheaper than MRI. An MRI costs the system anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000. This test goes for $250 to $350, and Medicare handles it the same way that it handles any other ultrasound, is in terms of from a cost deal. One of the problems with it is it's not widely available. It was developed up in Phil's backyard, up in Toronto, and I'm in a major center for a medical mecca in Chicago, and they don't even have it available here. You have to go to where Richard May lives. They got a couple of them out in Ohio. They got it in Indianapolis. And, so access varies now, but this study shows that there's a benefit. And so I don't know if Phil wants to interject something about his own experience.
Just how easy it was. I mean, I guess I'm fortunate in that Dr. Klotz was one of the first people, I guess, to adopt micro ultrasound. I guess on a sort of a test basis being in Toronto. So he's been doing it for a number of years. And I've had 2 micro ultrasounds with Dr. Klotz. And I mean, they were like, just really, really easy. And you get your results right away. So you know what, where you are. I guess the two problems with micro ultrasound. It requires not so much training to use, I guess, training to use the equipment, because the doc or the user is also, in this case, the pathologist. So he has to read and score the readings, and that takes a certain amount of training.
But an advantage to the patient is it's a one-stop shop.
Exactly.
With MRI, you got to deal with the urologist and the radiologist. In this case, it's only one. And this kind of harkens back to not even all that long ago. It was only around 2010 that that MRI became available for diagnostics with prostate. Prior to that, it was only ultrasound. So, if Phil, I do a newsletter called The Active Surveiller, and next couple of days I'll have an article about this, and Phil wrote firsthand about his experience. And some of it's almost funny, okay, a little bit. The wife comment. And then I'll be real quick. Another big issue that this group I assume they still talk about is transperineal versus transrectal biopsies. And I have been campaigning for about 5 years for a change over to transperineal. A big emphasis in this is that it's safer. It goes through the perineum, also known as the taint. It gets scrubbed, and so it's not germy, and it goes in, and it's supposed to be safer. The whole controversy with this started about 2017, 2018, when a Norwegian patient died, and his daughter looked into it, and he had died from sepsis. And she thought, God, 30 days ago, he had a prostate biopsy. Could they be related? Well, she was ridiculed. But she finally went to her father's doctor, who started to look into this and found that there was a direct relationship in her father's death between the biopsy and sepsis. He had a clot thrown to the brain. At any rate, so things started to happen and research happened, and European Association of Urology adopted guidelines that said that priority should be given to transperineal as opposed to transrectal, which is also called by critics transfecal, because it can push germs into the prostate, and that's what leads to sepsis. At any rate, so in the last year, there have been 4 studies, 3 of them mainly focusing. These are the first sort of randomized studies done with this, and 3 of them kind of emphasize the angle of infection. But this new study out of Oxford, the lead author is from University of Oxford. He said, that we've been looking at it the wrong way. The prime thing we should be doing is trying to find the best way to find cancers. And so he ran a study called Translate. And if you haven't heard of it already, you will be hearing about it. And Translate showed 6% better detection rate of cancers than with transperineal than transrectal. And so this was presented in a plenary session called Game Changers, and they consider this a game changer. In Europe, transperineal is a lot more common. The United States, maybe 10 to 15 guys get transperineal. There are problems with transperineal. A lot of guys feel that it's very painful. Um, uh, the, the study out of Oxford found that there was a trend towards that, also a trend towards embarrassment, because as Phil notes, you're put into a stirrups situation like women typically are for their exams, and so your genitals are
Oh,
hanging in the breeze temporarily, and so you'd think that'd be the least of the things to worry about, but so guys are embarrassed a little bit, and the essential thing is they're finding more cancers with it, and that should be the most important thing. We all know, at least some of us old timers know guys where the cancers were not found with transrectal. Transperineal has greater access to the whole prostate. So I don't know if I need to go on and on, but I just wanted to share that. That's
Howard, I want to thank you for always being on the game here, and also with regard to the embarrassment. I think we have to figure out how to get through that, because how silly are you going to feel if you don't get this thing tested and get it taken care of? I mean,
right.
And so, and I remember my wife, when I first went in for a colonoscopy, I was like, squirming, like I was spread eagle on a table with residents walking through, coming in and taking notes. So, get over it, man.
Yeah, that's funny. We had a meeting here in Chicago of local guys on active surveillance. It was face-to-face meeting. And I sent one of them up to see Dr. Klotz a number of years ago, and he told the story of getting his getting a transperineal, not to transperineal. He got the ultrasound, this is for the transperineal, and next thing he knew, Klotz didn't know it. He had Klotz as a doctor, and they brought in 10 residents, and so there he is hanging in the breeze. But that should be the least of things.
Right. And we have to teach, I'll do anything they want if it'll save my life.
Gotcha. Yes, I see somebody raising their hand, but I don't know who.
It's me. Quick question. I'm supposed to go for a second biopsy next year. Can I tell my urologist that I want to do a transperineal instead of the other one? I mean,
Well, you can tell him, but does he or she do it? How many? Well, where do you live?
in New York City.
Well, in New York City, I guarantee you got transperineal available. But do you know whether they have it available at the hospital you're at?
No, I'm kind of new to this.
Aren't you going to from memory, weren't you at Memorial Sloan Kettering, Andres?
No, I'm going to New York Langone.
Oh, going to Langone. Do they do it at New York Langone? Does Stacy Loeb do?
I assume that they do, but like you mentioned, Rick, Memorial Sloan Kettering, they were among the first to adopt that policy of only doing transperineal.
One of the reasons I moved from Langone to Memorial is because of that.
Okay.
But this was just my particular doctor.
Right. So, I mean, Andres, the thing to do is to write to your doctor through the portal sooner rather than later and ask them, do they do it or does somebody do it? And if the answer is no, then you may have to start thinking now about switching your doctor to somebody who does do transperineal. A couple of things. I put in the chat window a link to the study that Howard was talking about that's in JAMA Network. Howard's article is excellent. We'll be referring to it and featuring it. Howard, please feel free to put your active surveiller link in the chat window.
Okay. I should, I wanted to mention. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Rick.
Hold on a sec. One of the big things that I just wanted to make sure, Howard said it, but I want to make sure it really hits home, is that in this study, they looked at using an MRI with ultrasound. They looked at using an MRI with micro ultrasound. Looked at just using an MRI. They looked at it every which way, and from up and from down. And what they really found out, to use the statistical language, that the micro ultrasound on its own was non-inferior, which means it was just as good. That's for language. That is like saying it was just as good as doing an MRI with a fusion biopsy with either I think transperineal or transrectal. I'm not sure if I can't remember what sort of biopsies they were doing, but the point was that if you do a micro ultrasound, you don't need to do an MRI as well, and that's a big deal because, as you know, people who come here regularly, we always talk about fusion biopsy. But you don't need to do fusion biopsy if you're getting micro ultrasound. So it makes it so much easier. The other thing that is important to note is that, although they didn't look at this, is that these micro ultrasounds, as Howard mentioned, can see places where the MRI cannot see. And so we've actually known people who have thought they had 3+3, they had a little movement in their PSA. When we got in, we found out they actually had 4+5. And 4+4, there was hiding in the rear. So excuse that pun. I didn't really mean hiding in the rear, but it was hiding in the rear. It was what's called on the anterior side, which is kind of the blind side to most biopsy.
Hey, Rick, how about this? The backside of the moon.
There you are, the backside of the moon. I love it, Howard. So we got a few questions, Mr.
Hey,
Eric.
Can I make a point before I
Yes.
forget? The system that's popular now, or gaining popularity for transperineal, it was designed to be done in offices, but what we found in this group was a lot of the guys just felt very uncomfortable. It's supposed to be a momentary pain. I've only had transrectal and never got sepsis or anything, but if I were to do it today, I'd get a transperineal. But the point is some facilities will knock you out for this. I mean, if Hugh was here, he would say that it was the best nap he ever had. He got knocked out for it. If Gary was here, he would say that they gave him, I don't know, the goofy pills. If I can quote those two. So you could be knocked out for this, like most people are for colonoscopy. You got to explore with your local doctors, what the options.
It was mandatory at Memorial for me.
Yeah. You were knocked out at Memorial.
Yeah, for the transperineal, yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, somebody had questions. I just wanted to get it out of my head before I forgot. Somebody had a question.
Good to see you again.
Who's talking?
This is Eric in Atlanta.
Oh, Eric. Yeah.
Good to see you.
We met in LA. So
Yeah, that's right. So a question is, who does the exam? Is it the urologist or a radiologist? And how do you know how good they are at doing it since it's so new?
Well, you're talking here about the micro ultrasound.
Correct.
Well, it's a good question. I tell you what I would do. The company has a finder thing. Somebody contacted me who had read my story and told me a horror story down in Miami about how he went to see somebody this week who did a micro ultrasound on him, but the damn doctor didn't know how to read it. He handed it to the guy, and he basically said he didn't know what to do with it. So personally, with that, I would go to their finder and see who comes up, and see if it's somebody you know. Um, I would get in touch with the company and see if this doctor they have like a master training program.
Yeah.
And I would try to find somebody who has experience with this. Otherwise, you're wasting your time and you're not getting the benefit. I mean, I was shocked with the story this guy told me this morning. So I introduced him to one of the vice presidents at the company, and they offered to review his images if he still has them. But just because it's better doesn't mean everybody does it better. So Eric, you're making a good point. It's
So,
always good to check these doctors out if you can.
so is it the urologist that's doing the
Yeah.
scan and they're now imaging specialists at the same time?
Well, historically, they were the ones that were imaging using ultrasound. So,
Hmm.
the radiologists, got into this with the pre-biopsy MRIs. So, yeah, I mean, the urologists are supposed to be trained to do this. They have special training programs for the last 5-10 years.
Do they
So,
do they
Howard,
use it in conjunction with a targeted biopsy in real time?
I think
well,
it can.
it's with a targeted biopsy, yes. So they're doing the micro ultrasound and the biopsy at the same time,
So
and you
they can
don't
be
need an
super accurate.
MRI. They don't need to add the fusion part. But I
So
just want to say, because I'm just sort of watching the time a little bit, and I know we got a bunch of new guys.
Hmm.
Um, Eric was good enough to put that link to the physician finder in the chat window. If anybody wants to go to the chat window for the new guys are the two boxes. We've got two questions, and then we let's not take more questions on this. We'll hand it back to Dan and Co to go on. But Ignacio, you had a question early on. Do you still have that question?
I did have one, but Howard answered it before I could ask it. And basically, what I was going to ask is if anybody here has had both. I'm fine with the embarrassment issue. I'm more concerned about the pain issue because I'm a chicken, huge chicken. So, you know, but he answered that they can be put under.
If you have concerns about pain, I think, I mean, personally, I think that a lot of this is guys scaring guys about it. It's uncomfortable, maybe, but it's momentary. But a lot of these ANCAN guys that were around when I was doing this sort of thing, got knocked out. It's available. And like Hugh would say, the best nap I ever had. So